There you go. Some people literally don't know that because you're missing out on going to Ohio State. How to get into Ohio State, 100% guaranteed.
Count 1, 2, 3, and don't you stop the music, get into it, won't you dance with me? Find a place and lose it, you can do it, won't you dance with me? Move your downtown, we let it go, sunset high and our bodies low.
Hey y'all, what is up? It is Marissa Nicole and welcome back to my channel. Some of you may know me as my drifting desk where I help you conquer college, and that's exactly what we're gonna do today to get y'all in to Ohio State the Ohio State University. This has probably been one of my most requested videos this fall season because I am of course a student at the Ohio State University and y'all all know this, and so y'all have been asking like, how do I get in? I wanna go to OSU. Well, how do I do it? How do I do it? I'm here to share that with you. Before we dive into the video, please consider subscribing down below, turning on your post notifications. That way you never miss a video. I post a ton of videos about college in general, how to conquer college, Ohio State college videos, college vlogs, whatever, you name it, I got it. Also follow me on Instagram down below for all the behind the scenes of all my videos, things that you don't get to see on my channel, you get to see on my Instagram, so follow me on there as well. I want to break down this video that way you guys know what's coming and how I'm gonna kind of work through this video. First things first, I'm gonna talk about the application process for Ohio State, like how you apply and then what happens from there. How does Ohio State look at your application, the evaluation process of your application, all of that. Then we're going to take a look at the majority of the students at Ohio State and what do they look like. So that way you can kind of think, am I on par with that? Can I go to Ohio State? Do I match most of the Ohio State students? And then at the end, I'm going to share my secrets for getting into Ohio State guaranteed. Like there is a way, and I'm going to share that with you later at the end, so stick around for that. So let's talk about the evaluation and application process first. Of course, you need to figure out what way you want to apply, whether that's the early action deadline or regular decision deadline. For Ohio State, early action is November 1st, so if you haven't already applied for November 1st, it's probably too late for you to get all of the application materials in by now, but that's okay. You can still apply for regular decision, which is February 1st deadline. I have a whole video on how the application process works or how to apply to colleges in general, so I will link that up above. That way you guys can check that out because I go into depth of what you need to actually submit to a university to apply and how the application process works on your end. In this video, we're going to talk about how the application process works once you submit that application for Ohio State University specifically. So watch that video first if you need to, because now we're going to dive into what happens after you turn your application into Ohio State. Once you submit an application to Ohio State by the deadline, OSU starts to review all of those applications. When OSU does review your application, it is done holistically, and by that they mean that they're looking at a lot of different things when looking at your application. They do not just look at your GPA or ACT score and then admit you based on a 32 ACT and a 4.0 GPA. So they're also going to be looking at, one, if you actually completed Ohio State, like the state of Ohio's minimum college prep requirements. We will go over those in a second. They of course look at your high school performance, so they will look at your class rank or your GPA. They will look at it unweighted, and so when you're filling out the common application, it only lets you fill it into a 4.0 scale, and so if you have a 4.8 like I did when I applied, they don't care. They want to look at the unweighted GPA, so I put that in instead. That's just kind of a heads up kind of thing, so that way you know. But they'll also be looking at whether or not you are participating in accelerated programs, taking AP classes or College Credit Plus classes, and how you performed and all of that. Of course, they're going to look at your standardized test scores, your ACT or SAT test score. Ohio State does not super score, so if you're going to send over multiple scores, they do not combine that and make a giant super score from you. They only look at the highest composite score for one single test area. So if you take the ACT 4 times, they're going to look at the highest composite score out of those 4. They will not super score. They also look at your ability and desire to contribute and engage with a diverse community. That basically means that Ohio State is a huge campus filled with a lot of students. Ohio State is a huge international school, so a lot of international schools come. We have a lot of diverse students here, so they want to know that you are willing and able to participate in a diverse setting like that. They also want to look at your experience, whether or not you had leadership qualities or you had leadership roles, were you engaged and involved in the community, in your school, all of that stuff. So clubs and stuff that you can join, jobs that you had, military service if any, sports that you were in, all of that. Ohio State does take into consideration whether or not you're a first-gen student, which basically means like if you're the first person in your family to go to a college or university. Ohio State has a lot of programs and initiatives set up to better allow first-generation students to come to college and come to Ohio State, so they do look at that, whether or not you are a first-gen student or not. They also want to see how you demonstrate a particular talent in a certain area. That can literally be anything, whether or not you're talented in cinematography and you're a YouTuber YouTuber and you make videos, or if you're talented in your sport and you're cheer captain. I know that's what I wrote about in my college essay, and all of these things. They just want to see that you are excelling in a particular area and you have either a hobby or a talent that you enjoy doing and that you are passionate about. And they also take a look at whether or not your high school performance could have been negatively impacted by physical, mental, or learning environmental factors, and that can be said to Ohio State through a personal statement that you can write and submit to the university. Or you can figure out a way to include that in your essay on the Common App, or you can actually write up a Word document, save it as a PDF, and email it to the university. That way you can submit a personal statement that explains maybe why you didn't have good grades your freshman or sophomore year, or maybe why your GPA isn't where you like, or maybe why your ACT isn't where you like it because you struggle with XYZ. They will take that into consideration. And the last thing that they look at in sense of like a holistic review of your application is your eligibility for and the likelihood of you benefiting from some of the services that Ohio State offers, such as support services, disability services, those kinds of things. So with all of that in mind, like that's kind of like the big picture that Ohio State looks at when reviewing applications. When they're making a holistic review, they look at all of those things, not just an ACT, not just a GPA. So there's not one thing that gets somebody admitted. It's always a lot of things, if that makes sense. The next thing I want to talk about are the college minimum prep requirements that Ohio State requires you to have when you're applying to Ohio State. This is on their website, so I'm actually gonna pop up the chart here while I'm talking about it because it's kind of confusing in a way if you're not sure what I'm talking about, but I'll also post all of these links and just information for Ohio State in the description box below, so check that out as well. You can see that there's 3 columns, one being a minimum required, a recommended, and an additional consideration. So each of the subjects that are listed on the left-hand side, English, math, natural science, social science, foreign language, visual or performing arts, there's like requirements for each of those. So for English, the minimum that you are required to have are 4 units. The minimum that you should have for math are 3 units, but it's recommended that you have 4. Does that make sense? You have to have 3 units of natural science. You have to have 2 units of social science, but it's recommended that you have 3. You have to have 2 units of the same foreign language, but it's recommended that you have 3. So you can't take French 1 and Spanish 1. That's not going to work. You have to take French 1 and 2, and then what would help is French 3. And then you have to have at least 1 unit of a visual or performing arts. And that's like the minimum prep requirements to get into Ohio State. So I would make sure that you have all of those things completed before applying to Ohio State because those are the minimum requirements that you need for admission. Another thing that I wanted to point out, in the additional consideration column, you'll see that math, natural science, and foreign language have X's in them. And if you go down to the bottom of this chart here that I have popped up here for you, the additional consideration says, success in these areas is a strong indicator of one's potential to succeed in college. Therefore, students exceeding the minimum curriculum in these subjects are given additional consideration. So that basically means if you hit the minimum, you're doing great. But if you hit the recommended, if you're hitting the additional consideration, then Ohio State is giving you more consideration for admission, basically. You want to strive for that additional consideration, but at least hit the minimum requirements. Once you've completed the minimum college prep requirements, you've submitted your application, they're taking a look at it holistically, and while doing all of that, they don't even know what major you're applying for. So Ohio State admits with a blind major. They don't know what you put on the application. You have to indicate something, obviously, but when the committee, the team, the people, whoever actually evaluates your applications, they don't know what major you're applying for. They are strictly admitting you into the university. Because some people think that applying for maybe psychology will get me in because that's an easier major than applying for business or applying for engineering. And that's false because Ohio State does not look at your major when admitting you into the university. So you can apply for any major and still get admitted with the same chances as applying for any other major. What happens then is once you're admitted into the university, Ohio State will send your application off to the college or the major that you've applied for, and then they will admit you into the major. So that does mean, because I'm sure you're probably thinking it, that you can get admitted into the university and denied your major. So what then? That major can decide to admit you into the pre-major where you have to complete some prerequisites or something. That way you can get into the major, or you're put into the exploratory undeclared program within that major. So that way you can either pick a new major, continue to work towards that major, but basically you're not in that major. But you're still admitted into the university. So getting denied your major does not revoke your admission into Ohio State. Another thing to consider when you're applying to Ohio State is that Ohio State will not look at your application next to or in conjunction or in comparison with any other application. So they are only going to be looking at yours and deciding if you will be admitted or not. They're not going to take a look at yours next to mine and be like, Marissa has a better GPA, so why don't we just take her instead of so-and-so. They will not compare you to people in your own school. They will not compare you to people outside of your school. They will not compare you to people in your major because it's a blind major. They will only look at your application and decide to admit you based on your information once they look at it holistically. So you don't have to try to outbeat all of these other people. You just have to be the best that you can be. They're only going to be looking at your application. Now I want to segue into who typically gets into Ohio State. So what do the statistics look like of an admissions class at Ohio State? They actually have this information on their website, so I'm just going to read it from their website, that way I don't mess up because there's a lot of numbers. So this is a snapshot of last year's admittance class, so not like fall of 2019, it would have been last year. This first section is going to be about the minimum college prep requirements, and so 87% exceeded the foreign language requirements, 99% of students exceeded the math requirements, and 90% of students exceeded the natural science requirements. So again, like we were talking about before, you can hit that minimum, but you really want to strive for more because the majority of admitted students to Ohio State are doing more than the minimum. This next section is based on class rank, and so 95% of admitted students ranked in the top quarter of their graduating class, and 63% of students ranked in the top 10% of their graduating class. And the last section is based on ACT and SAT test scores, and so we're going to talk about ACT first. 50% of admitted students scored between a 28 and a 32 on their ACT. So that means that 25% actually scored lower than 28 and 25% scored higher than the 32. And then for the SAT, 50% of admitted students scored between a 1320 and a 1440. So that means that 25% of the students scored below the 1320 and 25% of students scored above the 1440. And so that can give you an idea of possibly do you fit in with last year's snapshot. And I don't want to say that to deter you from applying if maybe you don't. I would always recommend applying because you never know, because again, they look at that application holistically. An ACT or a GPA or a class rank does not make or break your admission decision for Ohio State. So I would always recommend to apply if you really want to go to Ohio State, but it does give you an idea of what the typical student who gets admitted looks like. And while we're on the topic, I also just want to say that Ohio State does not have any minimum ACT or SAT test scores or GPA. So you can apply with any GPA, any ACT, or any SAT because they do not have a minimum. Okay, and now we've gotten into the exciting part. And basically this is where I'm telling you how to get into Ohio State 100% guaranteed. Because there is a way. And so I want to share that way with you because not a lot of people know this. Some people may, you may have already heard this, but some people don't. And I want to get that word out in case you don't, because you're missing out on going to Ohio State. As a freshman, you are 100% guaranteed admission into The Ohio State University at a regional campus if you are an in-state Ohio State resident. So if you have lived in Ohio, you are an Ohio State resident, you are guaranteed admission into any of Ohio State's regional campuses. Automatically. So if you apply into Ohio State Columbus campus and you're denied Columbus campus, you're automatically given a regional campus. Or if you apply to a regional campus, you're automatically given that regional campus. Now I know what you're thinking. You're probably like, well, I don't want to go to a regional campus. I want to go to Columbus campus. I want to go to Maine campus. And that's fine. But you're automatically already accepted into Ohio State. It's so easy to get to Maine campus, Columbus campus, because you're not having to apply to go to Columbus campus. You're already admitted to Ohio State. All of its campuses are still Ohio State. All you would do is apply to do a campus change. As long as you completed at least 30 credit hours and you have at least a 2.0 GPA, you can automatically come to Columbus campus. There you go. Some people literally don't know that, and I think it's important to know because Ohio State is attainable for you, especially if you're a state of Ohio resident. It's cheaper to go to a regional campus than Maine campus. You're saving money for a year. Why not? As far as like being on Columbus campus, like nobody thinks of campus change students differently. Like it's such a normal thing. Now, if you're applying as a transfer student, you are also 100% guaranteed admission into a regional campus if you have at least a 2.0 GPA. And the same thing applies. You could transfer in to Columbus campus after you've completed those requirements. So people think that Columbus campus is so unattainable or it's so hard to get into, but maybe I guess Columbus campus you could think of it that way, but Ohio State really isn't. You might have to start at a regional campus, but then you just come right over to Columbus campus. Now this last tip to get guaranteed admission into Ohio State is not guaranteed. However, I do want to say this because so many people believe this, and like I kind of believe this myself, but like there's no statistics on it, like there's nothing to actually prove it. So I'm not saying that this is 100% true. I'm just saying from me talking with people who have transferred and my transferred friends and just like knowing that, I feel like transferring in general to Columbus campus is easier than applying as an incoming freshman. For transfer students, for the Columbus campus, you need at least a 2.5 GPA to be considered competitive. So even then, Ohio State doesn't have minimum GPA requirements for transfer students. The majority of transfer students have that 2.5 GPA, so that would be something that you'd want to try to obtain in order to be competitive amongst all the other transfer applicants. I'm not saying that's true, I'm not saying that's not true, but just keep that in mind because again, you may save money by going to a community college, maybe your first year or maybe 2 years, and then transferring into Ohio State once you have a good GPA or whatever, and then you graduate with an Ohio State degree. I'm hoping this like inside look as to how the application process and evaluation process, what the students who get admitted look like, how to get admitted guaranteed. I hope all of this has helped you, or at least just given you a good insight at Ohio State, giving you some information, some takeaways. I don't know. If it was helpful and you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have any questions at all, like about what I've said or follow-up questions, whatever, leave me a comment down below. I respond to every comment regardless, but also I'll be responding to all these comments because I want to help you guys. I want to answer all of your questions. So if you have anything, let me know down below and I will help you out as much as I can. While you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more college vlogs, Ohio State vlogs, college videos, hacks and tips, all that good stuff. And follow me on Instagram for more behind the scenes of all of my YouTube life over there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video and I will see you in the next one. Bye!